All right, so let's see if this works. Here's the plan for today. A couple of days ago, when we were I should close this. So a couple of days when we were playing around with React Suspense in the new concurrent mode when building a data visualization. Well, not really so much data visualization as just playing around and seeing how it all works and fits together. This is what we built. So this gave me an idea for how we might be able to, will it run, will it load? For how we might be able to combine Gatsby, GraphQL, and this new Suspense stuff to make dynamic, basically to load an initial page with static data. Hey Tudor, good evening from San Francisco. How's Romania these days? Is it getting really cold there? So basically the idea I had was that we could fall back. So Gatsby first renders with preloaded static data and gives you a page. What if we could then use that as a fallback for Suspense mode while we're loading fresh data for that same thing? So that's what we're gonna try to do. I have no idea if it's going to work. We're gonna try to figure it out, but that's the general approach. I'm gonna use the SparkJoy app that I've been working on for a while, but mostly ignoring because I've been doing other things. I should probably also close this thing. I don't need that to be open right now. I also don't need this to be open. So this is just my my app. Let's run it to see if it's still running. Oh yeah, rainy and cold is the perfect time for coding, isn't it? So SparkJoy, I run yarn start, and we'll see what happens. Right, I have to go into the web part, front end part, run yarn start, and let's see. So this is going to start up the Gatsby stuff, and we're gonna find a page where we have some preloaded static data that we can then replace with fresh data. At least that's the idea. We're gonna see if it actually works, because I have no idea. Using browser only version of Super Agent in non-browser environment. Okay. Let's see. So I'm still waiting for this to load up. All right. Have fun at work, Tudor. Thanks for dropping by. Okay, so we go to localhost 8000 and let's see how this works. This is the thing. I'm gonna click Start Sparking Joy. That gives me the login stuff. I log in. We go to the login page. This is the auth callback page, and then here you see where we loaded the widgets. All right, does the login stuff not actually work right now? Yes, I remember this problem. So we had the problem that the login stuff didn't work, which means I'm going to need a different way to test this stuff, because if this app doesn't really work right now, see, okay, no, that's not working. I don't know why use auth isn't working here. I forgot about that problem, which means we're gonna have to build a completely, let's build a new one. Actually, no, I should have something that we can try. Let's see. ls photo sharing. No, is it in the workshops folder? So I have a couple of these test Gatsby apps that I can utilize. I just need to find the right one. CD shared photo album, ls. If we go into the web and we click yarn start, this one might be able to run and work correctly. I haven't tested it since I ran the workshop in Spain 2 months ago, so I hope it still works, but I don't actually know. So we're gonna have to try this out. Okay, it's loading. Gatsby develop. I might need to change some passwords and stuff. That's possible. Okay, that's loading. So Otherwise, we're just gonna have to build something completely from scratch, which is fine as well. So we go to localhost 8000. We have the shared photo thing. Aha. Create your first album. That's gonna do the login stuff. I log in as myself. And there we go. I have the thing. If I reload this page, I get the album. Now I just need to remember how to open a specific album so that we can make that part a little easier. Because I don't have a listing of albums because we didn't get to that in the workshop. So I go into workshops, shared photo album, this one. And please let me know if any of the code or anything is too small and you can't actually see what's going on. I see a bunch of people showed up and then immediately went away. So we have the... Actually, let's just create a new album. So we're gonna create an album. We go to the album. And now I know that I need to... Or we can just open one of the albums. That also works. Okay, so we have an album. This thing, you see, loads images and then so this initially loads a bunch of images from the static build, and when you reload the page it tries to load more of them, I think. At least that's how it's supposed to work. Let's see what happens if we disable JavaScript. Can we disable JavaScript? Disable. How do I disable JavaScript in... Why do I always forget how to do that? Chrome disable JavaScript, just to make sure that it's actually loading without JavaScript. Click the Chrome menu at the top right hand corner of your browser, select settings in the JavaScript. Okay, Chrome DevTools, Control Shift P. Okay, that's the one. So Command Shift P. But that triggers the pocket thing. Okay, that's annoying. Okay, I'm going to remove this for a little bit. Remove from Brave. Remove. Okay, yes, don't care. But now we're on an album. I can reload the page and it loads, shows the shows the images. And then if I disable JavaScript like that and reload the page, this app works best with JavaScript enabled, then it doesn't actually work. Okay, whatever. So let's enable JavaScript, enable Command Shift P, enable JavaScript, reload the page, but at least we can go into an album. So that is our album thing. React mode. Okay, so now let's see, how does this actually load? Is it, I think it might not actually be using okay, so it's not using a preloaded compiled thing at all. We should fix that first, because you see it gets an images list, or the album page runs the use state page context images. So it does get images from the page context, doesn't it? So yeah, part of the problem is that I'm trying to remember how I actually put this together. Okay, right. So this is Gatsby node runs when we're compiling the app itself, right? So what I should be able to do is here, if we print the images without, so now we're not gonna be loading any query. This stuff is load on fetch, load fresh images on fetch, which means that if I run this, yes, use query is never used, get album query is also never used. So now I can reload this page, and you see even though I'm not running a query to get more images from the album, it's showing 4 images, which means that these guys are statically compiled. So now I can add an extra image. Let's say, what should we add? Let's add a pretty goat that is uploading, and it's eventually gonna finish uploading. So you see, once we uploaded an image, it immediately showed up in the album. But if I refresh the page, then the goat isn't there. Oh, the goat is there. Why is the goat there even though I'm not reloading the images? I don't understand how this works. Are we automatically reloading things? Let's see. Console log page context, and let's see what actually happens here. So reload the page, you get page context. Loading is not defined. Okay, so let's say loading equals false. We don't start with the loading state, and we get 4 images for the things because those came from, right, those are from the page context. If I rerun Gatsby start, then those images are all going to be available. Now, what can we do to load these images and then use Suspense while we're loading stuff? Yes. I know I'm not explaining myself very well right now. That's because I'm making it up as I go, and it's kind of, I'm basically thinking out loud, and my thoughts are kind of jumbled right now because I have no idea what I'm doing. So the first thing we're gonna do is stop yarn start and prove that if we restart it, then the build time GraphQL query is going to run, and this is going to show 5 images instead of 4 images. Let's see if I'm right about that one. Running page queries using browser only version blah. Reload the page. Let's see. Oh, and I'm not using SparkJoy anymore, so I should. Let's do it this way. Okay. Bam. So that updated the titles, and now we're going to have 5 images here, including the goat. Perfect. So that worked. Now the next step is updating React so that we can use it with the experimental version. And how do I upgrade to an experimental version of React? That is the question. If we go into package.json, not on the server but on the web, how do I update React to get the experimental version? Let's see, code sandbox. What is the one that I used here? Let's see, code React DOM experimental. How do I actually install? Does anyone know how to get experimental React running in an installed project? Because I apparently don't. Okay, what if I go to GitHub React.js or React or whatever it's called? Dashboard. Cool. I think there's going to be absolutely nobody watching right now. React, because everyone is out for Halloween. Facebook React. How do I get an experimental version of this? Actions, pull requests, releases. That's 16.11, 16.10. React context. Experimental. Oh no. React current. Experimental. How do I install it? Because I don't actually know how to install this. Install. Yeah, no idea. In experimental builds. Oh, I think I just need to install from master, right? let's try that. Let's try installing from master. How do I actually install from master though? If we look at the last commit on master, it is a1f blah. So that looks like it should be it, right? Right. So I'm gonna get here, we're going to say Facebook React master, and I'm gonna get this, and I'm gonna see if that actually works, because I have no idea. Yarn, let's do rmrf node modules, and then run yarn, and hope that that gives us how to install React experimental. Preparing for the future with React pre-releases. There we go. Release channels, experimental. Aha. Like next, usually an update to next is accompanied by a corresponding update to experimental. Do not use experimental, yes. Releases in experimental are published with the experimental tag on npm. That's how that works. Okay, so I'm gonna take the same experimental tag I used here. So how do I type that? 000 experimental minus f6b ad31a7. So I'm gonna take that like this, and we run yarn. That's going to install the experimental mode on localhost, and then probably not gonna publish this article tomorrow. It's probably gonna come out on Monday instead, but I think it's gonna be a cool one. I hope. Potentially useful? We'll see. That's running, it's installing. One with hooks, Facebook, where am I? Album. Okay. So that thing is running, or we're installing everything. Now let's see what happens next. So the idea would be that we need to render this with Suspense, and then while it's suspendering, we would then run the query somehow. Yeah, okay. Yarn start. My current version of yarn is out of date. Wow, that's unfortunate. So that's running. Now where would I get, so I should get Suspense from React. We'll see if that loads. And then how did I use Suspense over here? I'm gonna kind of copy what I researched last time so that I have less stuff to think about. Right? Right. Okay. We got the browser only version blah, and if I rerun this right now, it should just look exactly the same as it did before. We're gonna get the 5 images. Yes. Do you work? Okay, so we have the 5 images, they loaded, everything's great. Now let's try loading that with Suspense instead, or rendering it with Suspense. So here, bar loader, aha, here we're going to say Suspense fallback equals this. So the fallback is that we're rendering with page context.images images or empty, and then once we have everything, we are gonna load it here, where we're gonna get images as just images. like that, and then those images are going to not come from state. Instead, the images are going to be const images equals, and that's going to be called not resource. Aha. So we're gonna have to build a simple right. Image query dot images dot read, like that. So that's going to read from our images, and for the image query, let's see, how did I do fetch data from the fake API? So our fake API here is going to have image query. So we're going to create function image query, which is going to return image query dot read. Now let's go into into React Apollo or Apollo. Let's see, React Apollo, and React Apollo should let us make a query. So we have React Apollo here. Is there already a version with Suspense? There isn't. Docs, Apollo GraphQL, docs for React, declarative, data fetching. Write a query and receive data without manually tracking loading states. Okay. Explore Apollo client, official Apollo tutorial, community integrations, Apollo elements, via Apollo fetching data, queries, mutation, local stage, subscriptions, pagination, queries. Okay, how do I do this? It's been a while since I've done it manually. So use query, I've used the use query before. That's a hook that you can use. But let's see, caching query results. Hey Asim, how are you doing today? Okay, let's look at Apollo client instead. Popstagram, use query, zero config caching, Apollo client, Apollo client, zero config caching, client config. How do I run something with client? Combining local and remote data, yes, that is vibrant ecosystem, case studies. I forgot how to run queries without I totally forgot how to run queries without using hooks, which is not great. Apollo, React Apollo. Okay, React Apollo without hooks. Let's see. Do I know how to use that? No, not React hooks. React Apollo, Apollo client. Now with hooks. Come on, I just want to use React Apollo directly. Now with hooks. Is there an example without the hooks? Multiple mutations, TypeScript support, improvements for React developers. GitHub, React Apollo. Let's see. I'm just trying to find, and if anyone can remember how to use this without hooks, I would appreciate it, because everything is talking about fetching data, queries, local state management, using fragments, queries, executing a query, and it's directly talking about hooks. What about this one? Apollo client, Apollo server, Apollo graph manager, client React, version 2.5, essentials, queries, receiving data, query component, aha, manually firing a query, there we go. So we need Apollo consumer from React Apollo. So let's see, we get the image query, and we're going to import Apollo consumer from React Apollo, like that, and then inside the image query, how do we get the client? The state client Apollo consumer, trying to use a query component, but I can also, let's see, we're already inside an Apollo consumer, aren't we? If I go to Gatsby browser, here we are in the Apollo provider, and the client comes from source Apollo, so we can do it this way. We can import client from source Apollo. I'm gonna move this down here so that I'm gonna get cleaner screenshots, and then we can say client, yes, okay. So we have the client and we can run a query on it, and I'm going to wrap these promises. So I'm gonna copy the example I had before, wrap promise. So this is the wrap promise thing. Come on, how did I copy paste that so poorly? So wrap promise, which is a promise like that. This is just a helper borrowed from React docs, from React concurrent docs. Come on, docs. So what we can do is this. So client.query gives, and we pass in the query as get album. Do we need any variables? What did we have here? We need variables user ID and album ID. So we're gonna have, the problem is that I don't have those variables before I start rendering, do I? We can hard code those, I think. Where does the page context come from? Page context just comes from there, but maybe there's a better way to do it. Can I access page context outside a component? That's a question mark. Hey Elon Musk blah, what are you up to? Variables, like that, and I'm going to copy this, but I'm going to hard code the user ID and the album ID for now. So that user ID, the user ID and the album ID. Album ID is hard coded here. Context inside a component, user ID and album ID. User ID and album ID come from there. Okay, and then the user ID, how the heck do I get my user ID? It should be in the application. If I look for, let's see, I should be in here somewhere. User, and my user ID is this thing. I think that's my user ID. We can actually go check on AWS because all of this is stored in DynamoDB on AWS, so we should be able to see what happens. My account, AWS Management Console. Tech Ops. Oh, nope, that's the wrong one. Signing into a different account. I gotta do it as myself, not as my day job. Okay, log in. Oh, it's getting late. I should go to bed. So this thing happens, and then I'm gonna go to DynamoDB. Zoom in a little bit so it's easier to see on the stream. Look at my tables. There should be a shared photo album FSF 2019 items, some test. Five. No, that's not it. Is it this one? So if we look for 5F37, then the user ID is this one, and that's the same user ID. Perfect. Yeah. So I got that. So we should now be able to run the query, but we have to return wrap promise client query like that. Now, this is our suspender that we're using to have pending error and success, which is what should work with the Apollo client as well. Where is it? Where did it go? Okay. So on get blah, we run the client on doc, and then it gets the thing. Perfect. So we get the data back from our promise wrap promise client query, and that returns a data object. So when we get the data object, we do images. So instead of images, we do image query.read. So when this happens, when Suspense, it runs the fallback, and then it gets the images with the album ID and stuff. So what we need to do is make sure that these images are directly the data. So we're gonna do it this way. Then response, and from the and we're going to console log the response and return response.data. That in theory should be the same as what the documentation said for what we get. Source Apollo is not resolvable, so let's do this // Apollo. So run the code, we get one error. Set images is not defined. We should not be calling set images. Add image to album. We are not gonna do. Once we add an image to the album, we are going to, how do we do that? That's an interesting one. We're not going to worry about that just yet. So now when I reload this page, I should be able to, let's see, console log image added. Okay, so let's see. Reload the page. No. Image query.read is not a function because why? It's returning a wrap promise. So what if we say images then? We return images of wrap promise blah the same way we did here. So wrap promise, count promise, wrap promise, client query. Okay, that should work in theory. So no, don't close. So I reload the page. What does wrap promise return? Where are you? Cannot read property read of undefined. Okay. So what if we say this? Const image promise equals blah. Right, so that's our image promise, and we wrap promise image promise like that, and down. Oh, and then I have to actually call this stuff. So instead of calling it like this, image query suspender dot read. So we're going to image query like this, and we're going to return wrap promise immediately. We don't need to add it to anything. Actually, no. Let's make it easier to read for people. So we do that, and then we say const image query suspender equals image query. We run that directly, and let's put in the album ID and the user ID like this, so that this stuff is easier. So this will make the code easier to understand when I finally use it in an article. Come on. Come on, computer. Stop messing with me. Okay. And we pass in the user ID as blah, and the album ID as another blah. Where am I? Like that. What am I keep mistyping things. So let's see. User ID, album ID. So this is now loading. We have the image query that uses a suspender. And we are const image query suspender, which is image query with all of the stuff. Same as what we did here. So here I'm calling resources fetch data, and then we're using resource directly. I can do the same thing here. I'm running the image query suspender as soon as the page loads, before we're potentially rendering anything. And then images come from image query suspender dot read. So I'm going to close this, reload the yarn, start again, so that we can start from scratch, and hopefully the page is going to load this time without errors. Post bootstrap. Things are happening. Reload the page. Come on. Okay, so this is loading. Come on, load. Load nicely, please. Fingers crossed that it works. Nope. What failed? Image query suspender.read is not a function. Why not? Because we are creating the image query suspender here. Error occurred, location provider component. So where is the error? Okay, this is what we get. Data gets the album created at with all of the images. So that's this stuff. Ah, no, that's this stuff here. So instead of returning response.data, we should return response.data.album.images. I think. Let's try that again. The problem is that wrap promise doesn't seem to be doing anything yet. So why is wrap promise not doing stuff? Oh, this is the problem. I forgot that I should be returning it right away, that I'm no longer doing an object. Now will you work? Aha, yes. Okay, that's pretty cool now. So it's the fallback loading is with all of this stuff. And now I can add an image. Let's see. That's too big of an image. Let's try this guy. Or this guy? No, we already did that. Let's try this. So I'm uploading this image. And it's part of the thing now. It's not added automatically. If I reload the page, it's loading 5 of them and then immediately adding the last image as soon as it finishes loading. Yes. Now that is cool. And the cool part is that if I disable my internet, so let's see, disable, let's go offline, and I reload the page, oh, then it says no internet, right. But if I can go on slow 3G and reload the page, so I'm on slow 3G, reloading the page, and it's going to render Gatsby stuff. Render the Gatsby stuff, and in parallel it's going to start making my GraphQL request. I hope. Well, it's supposed to, but apparently that test doesn't work. Anyway, the point is that this is working. This experiment is totally valid. I just need to come up with a better example for it. But look. See, it loaded all of the images, and when I add a new one, what is this one? Okay, I add that image, it gets uploaded, and now when I reload the page, while it's suspended, and then it immediately adds that thing, and that is just so much faster than waiting for the render to finish. Nice. So I can remove all of this stuff, and it just works so much better. Sweet. Okay. Nice. Cool. So that's the experiment for you. I'm going to stop live coding now. If anyone's watching this, I'm pretty excited that this worked. I'm gonna have to come up with a better example for an article on probably on Monday, but on Sunday we're going to live code a data visualization because it's a month since the last one, so it's time for a new data visualization project, and we're gonna have a bunch of fun with that. So if you're around on Sunday, come say hi. And in the meantime, thanks for watching. See ya.